Hey guys, good evening and good afternoon. Good evening and good morning. This is Rakesh. And I hope you guys can see my screen and listen to my voice. Can you guys hear me and see the screen? Alright, thanks for confirming, and I'm really sorry for the confusion that we had over the weekend, because we are supposed to have a session over the weekend, and I tried to coordinate with the training coordinator, but he was not feeling well, so the message was not properly conveyed, and we could not have the sessions after the real-time class topic that we had. Right. So, if you have any questions, I would recommend you to utilize this time for questions till we wait for the rest of the folks to join. We don't do much of a scripting, Adam, because we have all the pre-built transformations in data services, so we pretty much not do a lot of scripting on data services. All we can, or all we will do is decode and if enough statements to the max. Because everything is available within data services as an inbuilt component or a prepackaged component in the form of transformations or in the form of built-in functions. So there is no need for us to utilize or recreate whatever is there in the system. So you can utilize the existing ones. Any more questions? What resources can you refer to XML? Can you be a little more clear on that, Adil? Right. So, as I mentioned right before we started real-time scenarios, like dealing with XML data, this is a very rare scenario that we will. So this is a very rare scenario that we get into, and we will not generally utilize the XML sources and XML targets in general, because even all these projects that I worked on, from the last 8 years, I have only seen one project where we purposely did it as a POC to handle the nested data with a project called as real-time data governance. So that is where we actually utilize the nested schemas. But just in case, this is for you to know how to handle a nested schema. That is what we are getting trained on. But generally, we will not have much of the projects on that one. Alright, we'll get started. I was just waiting for Chandra and Satya, I guess, like they were asking me more about the Hana session. So, alright, let's get continued. One second, guys. Alright, so now let's see how do we load the data into SAP HANA using BODS, because it's high in demand and most of the customers are going for SAP HANA. So before we get into details on how we load the data into SAP HANA and what we call that, we will see what SAP HANA is, right? So SAP HANA, right, is an IMDb in-memory database, and so I'm not going too much details into SAP HANA, but I'll try to give the basic fundamentals and how it works and why it is hot in the market, or why people are, or why customers are going or tending to go towards SAP HANA. So we will see some fundamentals of it, and then we will see how do we do a data versioning into SAP HANA using BODS. So SAP HANA is an IMDb or IMC, which is not just an experiment. When I say it is not just an experiment, it was, it came out from a lot of acquisitions and a lot of strategies. Because general applications that we see, even if you look at the SAP systems, you have SAP that is divided into two different layers. One is your application layer, and the second one is your database layer. Right. So everything that we work on is divided into 2 or 3 layers. So probably you might have one more layer at the top of it, which is called as reporting layer. Right. So whenever I try to refresh a report on the reporting layer, what will happen is, like this report sends a request to the application. This sends a request to the application, and this application will read that request and send it back to the database. Database responds to the request. From database, it will push the data to the application, and from this application, it goes to the report. Right. So this is a very common or a straight scenario that happens whenever you try to request some data into a report. It goes through the front-end application to the database, and data responds to the application, and then it goes to the report. So this is pretty much fine when we are dealing with a small volume of data, but when the volume of data is high, when you want to do some real-time analytics or real-time data statistics analysis and all these things, so the volume of data that sits in the application's RAM will slow down the application from refreshing the report data to the report. Right. So now SAP has acquired so many technologies. We have Sybase, and from Sybase it has captured the in-memory database, and then it took MaxDB, and like it combined all the technologies from all these acquisitions, and then it fine-tune the SAP HANA system. So SAP HANA is an in-memory database, an in-memory calculation engine or computing engine, where the entire data, instead of, this is a disk drive, and this is the hard disk on which this database is present. But instead of saving the data in the disk drive, So when you write from the application or read from the application from a database or to a disk drive, the I/O operations will take time. But in SAP HANA, instead of database, the entire data is saved in the system cache. Right. So this is the system cache, the RAM on which your data is saved. So the retrieval time, when you write a query or when you hit a query on the RAM, right, the retrieval time is pretty fast. So even you can relate this to data services. When we execute a data flow, the entire data sits in the system RAM, and all the calculations are done in the RAM, and that is the reason why it gives you a fastest output. So it sits on your cache, right, and reporting layer, or you have a front-end layer called as Hana Studio. This is called as Hana database, which is nothing but your in-memory database, and there you can connect this to a reporting layer. Hana doesn't have its own reporting flavor, but you can connect SAP HANA to the HANA Studios, or the applications or the models that you create on SAP HANA Studio to a universe, and on top of that universe you can go ahead and create some reports. Right. So this is the key difference between the other legacy systems or databases and SAP HANA. HANA stores the entire data in your system cache, and how it does a backup to what do you call this? Protect the data from a system crash or all these things. That is a separate story on how it takes the backup, the periodic backups, how it enables the periodic backups, what are the security measures that are taken to protect the data and all these things. That is a complete different story. But from the line of that we have learned till now is extracting the data, transforming the data, and loading the data. So we have seen different sources from which we extracted the data. We have seen different transformations in which we will be utilizing to convert the data or transform the data. And now we will see how we will load the data into SAP HANA. So when we are talking about SAP HANA loading, so this is called as data provisioning. So there are different type of provisioning mechanisms. You call it as system landscape transformation, direct extract connectors, and SAP BODS, and there are a few more, couple of more provisioning mechanisms. Right? So system landscape transformation is mostly used when you are moving the entire landscape from SAP to SAP HANA. Right? So SLT connects to mostly to your SAP systems, and from there you trigger the loads, and it does a real-time replication. So it does a real-time replication. The moment the record is inserted, updated, deleted on the source, that gets reflected onto SAP HANA. So direct extract connectors, it will take the extract structures, the communication structures, and load them into SAP HANA, so that we will not end up creating a joins on the tables that create the models over here. And BODS, it connects to both SAP and non-SAP sources. There is no specific restriction that BODS will not connect to the system. So we have seen all the different types of connections. So BODS connects to both SAP and non-SAP system. And let it be high volume data or low volume data, we can utilize BODS to extract the data from different sources and transform the data, cleanse the data, and load the data into SAP HANA. So when you look at other mechanisms like SLT and DXC, there is a lot of ABAP coding that has to be done in place for you to do some transformations. But with BODS, we can do a lot of transformations, do a lot of cleansing on the data, validations on the data, and make sure whatever you are loading into SAP HANA database is the accurate data, or 100% accurate data. So you can provide the best data to the target system using BODS. That is one good advantage. So this is called as data provisioning mechanism, and BODS is one of the data provisioning mechanisms that we mostly use to load the data into SAP HANA system. right? So when we load the data into SAP HANA, we load it into the HANA database, which is your in-memory database, and we can see the data through the studio, right? So when we log into the SAP HANA system, we log into SAP HANA Studio, and from there we will look at the data. And if you are familiar with Oracle or SQL, HANA will be pretty easy for you, because it's from what I understand and from where I see this is it is pretty close to Oracle. So you have a SQL developer in HANA, it is like HANA Studio, and you connect to the backend database from the SQL developer, and from there you start working on the backend database table, create some views, and you project these views and database tables to the reporting. The same activity we do from the HANA Studio as well. We create views called as information models. They are attribute views, analytical views, and calculation views, and we expose these views, right? So instead of providing a single table to the universe, we combine the tables and create some calculations on the studio itself, and we provide those calculated structures or those information models to the universe, so that we can directly do reporting on those information models that are generated on HANA Studio. So since reading the data from your cache, these applications refresh the data from the cache. The I/O time is pretty less, and they are faster compared to your database. Right. So let us see how do we do load the data in SAP HANA using BODS. Right, let me connect to our repository. I was just doing a test on the password just to make sure it is not expired. Alright, so I'll just create a new project and call this as PROJ underscore Hana, and we'll create a job. Alright, I'm calling this job name as job underscore load Hana, so that we will see how we will load the data into SAP HANA. Right, so what are the prerequisites? So I have a source, which is the database table, and then I have a BODS box, and this is my target. HANA is a database, right? So for us to connect to SAP HANA, so we need a data store created in data services, right? So we need to sorry, I did not get that. Sorry, that was probably me typing on the system. Is that okay now, or you still hear the voices or background noises? Right, I'll try to be gentle with the keyboard, sorry. Right, so for you to extract the data from the source, you need to have a data store, a source database data store, and you need to load the data into your target HANA. You need to have a data store that helps us to connect to the HANA system, right? So let us go and create a data store here. So go to the data store tab, right click, go for new, and call it as ds underscore HANA, and the data store type is a database. HANA is a database, so select the data store type as database. And now if you click on the drop down of the database types, right, so you see SAP HANA here. Click on that. The version is 1.x. We're still in 1.x version of SAP HANA. Then the database server name, communication port, username and password. Right, so from where we will get this information. Right, so let me close this one. We can get the entire information from Hana Studio. So first you need to log into Hana Studio. The navigation is Start, All Programs, and you'll see SAP HANA. If you click on that, you can go to the Hana Studio. Right. So when you connect to the Hana Studio, right? So this actually takes you to the first logon screen, which is your right. So this is your welcome screen. So this is your welcome screen that it will take you to. So based on how you want to work with the HANA, you can connect as an administrator by opening the admin console, or you can connect as a modeler, because the designers on the HANA are called as modelers, because we create the models, data models or information models on SAP HANA Studio. And if you want to create some coding, right, so R language is one programming language that can be written on SAP HANA, and you can also write some native SQL. So if you want to do that coding perspective, you can open through the development. So this is the perspective that general developers connect, which is modeler. And once you go into the modeler, you see three windows. One is your system, the second one is a quick navigation window. Let me close this, it will be blank initially. And the moment you open the things over here, this navigation window will start filling up. And the third one is a quick view that gives you a straight shortcut options using which you can validate the structure you have created, or you can activate them, or you can create some configurations and do some data provisioning using other mechanisms, right? And where used list is a list that will is a window that will populate by the option that you select. When you select a table, and if this table is used in multiple information models, you can go and see that from there by selecting the where used list. Is pretty much similar to the option that we have in data services, which is view where used, right? Even in SAP, you will have the view where used option. And the properties of any object that you select on the system, right? System tab, you see the properties of them here. And when you are running the job, you can see the job logs, the history, and the jobs that are currently running under processing. So this is from where you can switch to the perspectives. So this is the open perspective window. So you can go to the development perspective or modeler perspective, administrator's perspective. Right. So on the left-hand side, you see the systems that are already connected. But if you don't have any systems connected, you can right-click and say Add System. And here you need to give the server name, which is BW. Right. In my case, it is BW ERP HANA, and the instance number is 28. Just click on Next, and then username and password. Just click on Finish. Sorry. I think there is some mistake with the system number. Right, so just let me cross-check. Sorry, Rehan. I guess there's, other than the keyboard sound, I'm not doing anything else. Right. So if you select the system, once you connect to the select system, once you select that to a context menu and go to the properties, right? So you can see the properties. The name of the server is BW Hana, and 30015 is the port number, and that's it. So you can connect to this system by adding the system, right? And once you add the system, you can see that here, right? And under the system, you have something called as backup, so which takes care of the backup and recovery mechanism. And apart from that, catalog and content are the two areas where the developers work. So content is where we go and create the models, and catalog is where we will have our schemas into which we will be loading the data. So there are a number of packages under the content, so it takes a lot of time when you open this. So this is a package, right? So Zero HANA Copa is a package under which you have your attribute views and vertical views and calculated views. So these are the ones that I created earlier. So you have calculation views, analytical views, and attribute views, and procedures, and decision tables, and everything gets created under your packages. So this is the modeling part, and this is where we save the data. Under the catalog, we will create a schema with a simple SQL definition. So this is a SQL window. You click on this, and you write a simple SQL statement, create schema. But I'm just giving schema 1, but there are so many schemas. I'm going to utilize the existing one. So for your ID to create a schema, you should have privileges, pretty similar to the Oracle. For you to do a drop and recreate or insert or update, change the metadata of a table, you need to have privileges. So these users or IDs to which you log into SAP HANA should have those privileges to create the schema as well, right? So you can log into the administrator on SAP HANA, and you can just go and write a SQL statement like grant privileges, grant all to user Rakesh, and he can get the privileges, or there is a GUI way in which you can go and grant them privileges. So once you select this, right, and execute this, this is where we execute. I'm not going to execute because we have so many schemas on the system. We will go and utilize one. Once you execute this, your schema will be created, and once it is created, select the catalog, right click and refresh so that you can see the schema present under your catalog. So once you open the schema, so let us work with BODS HANA. So once you open the schema, you will see column views, ERP models, APM queries, functions, indexes, procedures, sequences, synonyms, and tables. So this is where our tables will get loaded when we trigger from BODS, right? So if I select a table, it will give you the table properties and where it is used and how it is populated. Okay, so now let us load data into this schema of SAP HANA. So for us to do this, we need to finish the data store. So we have to give the server name, which is BWERP name, and the port number is 30015. That's the default port, and username is system, and the password. And you can click on apply, and your data store will check the syntax, and it will give you a go ahead to connect and load the data. So there is another option too that you can use, is using the system DSN data source name. For you to utilize this option, you need to go to your control panel. Remember, you have to do this on the administrator, on the system, on the server, right? And then go to the administration tools. And on the administration tools, you have something called as ODBC connections. Double click on that, go to the system DSN, and this is where we add the DSN, right? So once you click on add DSN, it will take you to the list of drivers that are present on your system. So you need to select, the HANA ODBC, which is HDB ODBC, nothing but your HANA database ODBC server. Click on next, give the source name, then description, then the port server colon port number, which is BWERT username colon 15, right, 30015, sorry. And you can click on connect and pass the username and password. And click on OK, and it says successfully connected. I'm not creating one, but I'm just showing you the process because there are so many created. We'll go and utilize one that is already there. So we'll go and see this DS HANA, right, which is already available. Just change the description and click on connect. The username that I'm using is alright, successfully connected, so I can utilize this one, which is ds_hana. Right, we'll be utilizing this one. So back to data services. If you click on the ODBC administrator, it will take you to the same system DSN tab on the ODBC data source administrator. So select the ds_hana and click on OK. And from the drop down, you need to select that one, ds_hana, and give the username and password. Just click on apply. Okay, these are two ways in which you can load the data to your target data store or create a HANA data store. So I'm creating a quick job here. df_load HANA. Go to your source database, pick some tables, orders and order details. Use a query transformation. Now once you create the data store, frankly telling, HANA is just another target, right? So all you need to know is like how do you create the HANA data store, because once you create it, it is just one more target to which you will be loading the data into. I'm just doing a job condition. But SAP HANA is pretty good with huge volume of data. So the general strategy or expectation given by SAP is like you have your, let us say if it is a Walmart that is running on SAP HANA, and by the time you swipe the customer's credit card, so that fraction of a second should be enough to get the entire information about this customer. So in that fraction of a second, it will go and retrieve information. It will go and hit the database, do all the calculations, and then it will retrieve the information about the customer. So I pulled in all the fields and I'll call this table as, so I'll call this as load HANA new, and use the data store name as DS HANA. And here, the owner name, you need to change that to the schema name. So it is pretty much similar to your SQL Server, or it's not SQL Server but SQL Developer, your front-end tool for SAP HANA, Oracle. So there you log in with the username and create schemas. Schemas are nothing but the usernames to which you connect. So when you want to load the data into a specific schema, you need to give the name of that schema. So here it is 0HANA_BODS. So I'll give the name here. Just click on OK. Connect it with your query transformation. Validate it. Select the job, right, and execute. Now once the job is done, your data will be loaded into SAP HANA. Alright, the job is successfully completed, and we loaded somewhere around 2,155 records into the target system. So now let us go into SAP HANA and get the data. So the name of the table that we loaded is load HANA _new. So go to your schema. Under the catalog, select your schema, right click and refresh. Expand your table and you should see the table. So once you see your table that is loaded, you can select it, right click and do a quick open data preview. That will show the data, the records that are present, and if you want to do some quick analysis on your data, right, so go to the distinct values tab and you want to see the list of cities that are present in your data. You can just drag and drop it. Right, it will show you the values. For example, Grays is like 102, London is 82, Mexico DF is 72. So those many entries are present in the record, and it will also give you a graphical representation. This is a distinct value check. So if you want to look at the product IDs, you can just drag and drop it and it will change. And if you want to do some analysis, right, so go to the analysis tab, drag the customer ID and the quantities per customer. So you can see the graphs, then unit price. Right, so you can do a quick analysis and see if your data is good. You can also do a quick conversion. Right, this is the charts tab where you can convert this to a pie chart or some other graphical representations. You can do that. Or you want to look at it in a tabular structure, you can do that. Grid structure and HTML format. Right. So these are the different quick views that you can do on the data once you load the data into SAP HANA. And data services, remember, compared to the other data provisioning mechanisms like DXC and SFD, data services give you a lot of provisioning facilities where you can do a lot of transformations on the data, convert the data, validate the data, and you can load the data as per the schedule as required into SAP HANA. And once the data is loaded, there is no need for you to do some calculations. So back to this diagram that we are looking at. So now let us say I loaded some data into HANA database using SLT, and now I want to do some new calculated columns. So I have to do them in the information models. Right, I create an attribute view, analytical view, and calculated view, and I create all those calculations here so that I can keep the reporting layer right. But using BODS, you can do all the calculations within BODS and directly push them into the database tables here directly. And you can just do a view kind of a structure on top of these database tables and directly report them to or refresh them in the reports. So there is zero calculations on the database or on the studio level or on the reporting, and you can handle all the calculations on the data services. So that is one of the key methods that we utilize when we are trying to do the sales on data services. We kind of explain them the advantage that they can have in the report processing time if they go for data services. So that is how we load the data into SAP HANA using data services. Any questions on this? Any questions, guys? Right, so once we load the data into SAP HANA, it will help us like how you want to create the model part on this attribute views, analytical views, classification views. You can create some authorizations, restrictions, everything on the HANA system, and then you can expose them to the reporting layer. Alright, so the next topic that will, one second guys. Just give me a second, I'm trying to search for a couple of documents. Really sorry for keeping you on hold, but just give me a second. Right. So the next topic that we'll talk about is documentation. So before we start looking into project documents that I will be showing you, so we will start looking at what we have to do in the projects, right? So how it starts and when, because most of the projects they remain the same, but you follow the same methodologies or same phases or same project planning and all these things. But remember, when we are working on data migration projects, this is a bit different. It is not like a regular project that will help you to build the project, and it is not something that runs for 2 years or 3 years. So this, with the help of BPDMs and the data services, the accuracy and fastness, you can actually complete an 8 months project in just 1.5 months, 3 months, right? So this is a pretty fastest way in which we can complete the project activities as well. So this is a little different than because if you are working on the project management front, or if you have to give some project planning to the customers or to your management. So just keep that in mind that this is a data migration project. This is not like any other project, so that you can just put an SDLC, software development lifecycle, and prepare a project plan. This has specific methodologies. This is data services projects, and this has specific methodologies given by and proven by SAP, or we can say these are the lessons learned by the previous projects when we don't have the methodologies initially. The days I started working with data services, every company's had their own methodologies and their own approaches. And once these things are done, then SAP has taken all the lessons learned and it came up with the methodologies and practices so that the rest of the projects get benefited. So these are proven and these are really good. So we'll just go with the process and how we initiate all these things. It all starts with a cold call, or what we call as a sales call, through some references from the existing customers. Right, so with this, what will generally happen is that they will pitch in and they will try to talk to the customers, and they will try to tell them like what our company is capable of, what we can do, and what we have done in the past for the other customers who are in the same business line and they will try to explain them all the possibilities that what are the services that we can provide and how we can be helpful to them. And then we will try to discuss on the pain areas. So this is one of the discussion where we will try to understand what the customer is facing or what he is trying to achieve but he could not, and how we can support them. So let us say when the customer says that he has multiple source systems, his data is spread across multiple sources, and he wants to integrate all the sources into one single system so that instead of reporting individually on these multiple sources, he wants a consolidated system on which he wants to do a reporting. But since all these different sources, they are on the same business, so he is concerned about duplicates on the data or consistency on the data. Then this is where we can go and promote data services, right? So data services can integrate the data from multiple sources, combine them into a single data set, and load that into your target data set by providing 100% accurate and trusted information to the customers. So they will try to understand the pain areas like these from the customers, and they will try to tell that we can uh, we can provide you some solution, and they will try to request some questions from the functional team, what we call as FAQs. So we will try to get some questions or get more information from the customer by raising some questions from our end. So we'll try to understand what is their source systems, what are the databases that they are working on, do they have any SAP system as source, so what are their target systems, what is the loading mechanism that they are looking at. So we kind of put all these questions as architects and lead consultants, we kind of put all these questions to the customers, and we'll try to understand more because salesperson, he can just go and just sell the products or sell our get us more business, but he cannot really go and talk on the technical terms saying that this is what we can do. When the technical team pitches in, they will try and talk and get more information from the customers with the help of so we will get more information from them, and we'll try to understand that, and then the technical team will get into these discussions. So once we receive a response from the business on the questions that we have asked, so we will get a more good clear picture on what the customer is up to and what. So we will try to use some of the best cases from our previous examples, the previous customers that we have done, and we will try to showcase those business cases to the customer, saying that this is what we have done and this is what we can do to you, and these are the advantages that these previous customers had when we have done these data services implementation to them. Right, so we can convince them, and initially proof of concept, which we call it as POC or pilot project. So in this pilot project, so one person will be creating a POC. So they try to create a scenario where we will build a scenario around the customer's business line, and we will try to create similar examples like their source data and their target data, and we'll try to extract the data and load that into their target, and we will show the significant difference when they want to do that using the store procedures or any other loading mechanism or any other ETL tool. We will try to, explain them how fast we can do that compared to others. So once this pilot project is done, so initially we start with the requirement gathering. So this is one of the most important phase of the project. So this is where the actual project starts. So requirement gathering is one of the most critical phase of the project, because unless and until we are clear about what the customer is expecting, we can never deliver them what they are expecting. So we need to categorize or split the entire project into different sub-modules, and we can start gathering information. So let us say if we are trying to extract the data, we try to understand how many modules are there, right? And based on the module, we try to go and get more information on this module. right? Material masters, customers masters, vendor masters. And initially, in this requirement gathering phase, we will try to assess what is the volume of data that we are trying to extract from source and load it into the target. And when the volume of data, the number of objects, so we'll see how many number of objects that are present on the system that needs to be migrated. Like when I say object, there's a set of information that we need to make. Then we will also see what are the independent objects and what are the dependent objects. Right? So dependent objects are like once you complete A, then only you have to complete B. Right? There is a dependency. And independent objects are like they're not dependent on anyone, so you just need to move them from source to target so that it is just enough if they are present in the target system and they don't have any dependency. Probably these dependent jobs depend on these independent jobs. So these are kind of a prerequisites. So to tell more about that, these are kind of lookups or cross-reference tables that we need to load into this target database. So that once we do the dependent jobs, we can look up on these information and try to cleanse the data and validate the data. And then we will, once we identify the dependent objects, we will create a flow chart which talks about the order in which they have to be executed. Right? So first this job, then second this job, the order and their dependency. So we'll create a flow chart and then we'll try to understand the number of objects, the order in which they have to be executed, and the priority list as well. So as the volume of data and the number of objects are discussed, right? So parallelly there will be another workshop. So we call all these as workshops. Workshops that is pretty much important that we need to take care of is like we need to go and validate the system that is present on the customer. Right, so if they already have a POES system, we need to go and validate if it is enough or it is sufficient for the project. So initially when we started this kind of work, so it is all like the math that you have to do from the previous experience, like this volume of data, this much RAM, you have to do the calculations and all this stuff. But now in the service marketplace, there are so many calculators that are available, the PAM calculators, product availability metrics calculator. So you just need to key in your source volume and the number of objects that you want to migrate and the maximum number of records that are present in the table, and it will give you the specific system, what we call it as properties or the hardware and the software requirements that are required for this project. So you have the built-in calculators available right now, but it is always good you do a little analysis on that number of objects, volume of data, and then you decide on how you move the data from source to target. So based on that, we do the system assessment where we try to understand if their system is correct. So if they already have a system, we will try to scale up the RAMs and all these things and databases. And if they don't have it, so we'll try to propose the hardware requirement and the software requirement. And once they get the system, we will involve the administration team to install and set up the environment. So when they do this, they set up the development instance, quality instance, and based on the project, if you need some mocks, so it will be mock 1, 2, 3, and so on, and finally the production environment. Right. So this is the landscapes that we create. Right. So the one we have in our system. So we have to go and create these landscapes, and then we have to decide based on the number of objects, right, and the flow chart, the dependency. Like initially, you will not have much work in the project, but going forward, one person has to handle multiple objects. So based on that, the project managers, they generally decide on how they load the resources. So that is called as a resource load plan. So this is done by the project managers to see how they can ramp up and ramp down the resources as per the project requirement. So they have to literally see through the entire 6 months period or 1 month, 1 year period of this project, when do we need 10 resources, when do we need 20 resources, and they have to give this project plan, and that should fit in the project budget. So that is one of a critical game that we play as project managers to ensure that we still fit in the budget and consider more number of resources working on the project. So that is the ramp up and ramp down model that we generally create. And once these are done, right, then there is another workshop that is done in which, now in these workshops we understood the system requirement and we'll set up the system, and here we will see the number of objects, the volume of data, and based on the objects we will go and try to create how many developers we need for this project, how many testers we need for this project, and how many code promotion consultants we need for this project, and what is the strength of the production support. And we will go ahead and start creating. So the administrators will go ahead and work on the system, they'll create the landscape, they'll create the users, and then start setting up the environment and everything. So parallelly, the requirement gathering workshops will be there, where they will try to go at the next step, where they will ask the functional consultant to create a functional design document, which is nothing but a story for each and every module. Functional design document for material master, functional design documents for open POs, functional design documents for sales orders. So they will go and write a story saying that these are prerequisites for you to do this, and this is our assumption that these are already done, and this is what you have to do, and these are the source tables, this is the structure, this is the logic. So they will and generally the senior consultants of these, they will go and create a technical design document based on the inputs against the functional design document. So these guys, the TLs and the senior consultants, I generally don't believe in this only seniors working on this, because in one of my projects with SAP, they ask each and every consultant to go and write their own technical design document. Until they complete their technical design document, they will not be given access to data services, which means they have to foresee what they are trying to create. They should have a clear picture, and they should give the job name, the data flow name, and everything what they are trying to create in a document, and then only they will be given a system so that they can refer to this document and quickly complete their job, right? So it goes through a lot of peer review and code review process, but generally in regular projects, these guys go ahead and create the technical design document. So technical design document is nothing but we convert this functional story into a pseudocode. So here we can say these are the prerequisites that are done, and this has to be done, or these jobs has to be run, so that we can go ahead and run our jobs. And in the technical design document, for example, for material master, I give the job underscore mm, and tell all the table names that I'll be using and how I'll be mapping them to my target structure. So it is kind of a complete documentation saying that, okay, this is the job, in this data flow I'm going to do this, in this data flow I'm going to do this, this data flow I'm going to do this, right? So this gives me a clear picture of what I'm trying to do on the project even before I start working on my development. So once this technical document is done, now this goes to peer review. And these peer review guys, they will try to cross-check if the document is in proper structure and the code that is written in the document is decent, understandable, right? And once they give you a sign-off on this one, they'll give you an access to the system and you can start working on it. So by the time we complete this workshop, the expectation is all the functional design documents are converted to a technical design documents, and these will be distributed between the developers to start working on their development environment. But by this time, the administrators, they'll create their local repositories, central repositories, set up everything, create the data set, now once this is done, right, so we will have a project kickoff. Some guys, they will do it in the initial phase, just even before the requirement gathering, they do a project kickoff. And some projects, once the requirement gathering is done, they will announce an official date saying that, okay, this is from when we will start building the project. So here, the developers, they'll pick up these technical design documents, and we will also create something called as packages. Talks about the business rules, the validation that you have to do, the conversion that you have to do on the data, and the technical design document and the mapping sheet. These two will form the heart of the development. So, technical design document and mapping sheet and start working on the project. Alright, so that is done after the project kickoff meeting, and they will start building the project. And once the development is done, right? So once that project work is done, they will try to, I call it, build right terms. So once the bit of the job is done, they will send the document and the code for a review. Right? They will refer to this document, and if some changes has to be done, they will be updated on the document, and these two will be given to. So again, there will be peer review on the document, and so code review will be done to ensure that all the standards, project naming standards, forgot to mention. So before even we start the project development, there will be one document that talks about the project development standards. It says that this is how you have to name your data flows, this is how you have to name your workflows, jobs, tables, and everything. And especially if you are backend databases on Oracle, the content of the data name should not exceed more than 30 character length. That's a restriction on Oracle. So all these kind of standards will be given, and we will also see which methodology we will go for. So we will go for methodology. If it is a generic project, we go for all-in-one methodology, and if it is a SAP project, we go for SAP best practices for data migration, or we can go ahead and if it is for the benefit of the project, we can go ahead and modify these templates that are present in this one, or we can extend the AIO methodology that fit to create a new methodology that fits this project requirement. It's all on the ad hoc. You can go ahead and think on the project plans and think on the performance tuning options and all these things. We can go ahead and propose your model. But they will be built, and these two methodologies will be the base on which you can go and build your jobs, right? And based on the methodology, if it is AIO, you have to go and build your job on a methodology which will use an extraction. So all the tables are extracted here, all the tables are validated, and all the tables are loaded. So these three go through three conditions for extraction. Then again, we will have a separate condition for extracting the lookup information, and before even we go for validation and loading, we will have something called as reduplication process. Because this is for generic projects, when you are extracting the data from flat files, so you generally end up having some duplicates or bad data, so you go through the reduplication process, and you will do a validation, which means all the unique records you perform validations, and then you convert the data in the enrichment, and you do post-load, post-validation. We call it as post-val. So once you convert the data, you will revalidate the data to make sure whatever you are loading is correct, and then it goes to the loading part from where you will be loading the data into the target. So this entire activity that we are trying to do, extraction from source and loading into the target, sorry, it's split into different phases, right? So it is split into different phases where we'll be doing one activity one time. So I will extract all the data, and here I will scope saying that let us say I just need to extract the data from 2015 or 2014 or for a specific plant which the region should not be known. So I'll be using those conditions to extract the data, and on the extracted data I'll try to do a reduplication process, and then I'll do a pre-validation to make sure that the valid records are correct. And then I will apply the business rules, conversion rules and enrichment, and I will do a post val on the converted data and load it into the target. So I'll just walk you through one document, project document of this flow, and BPDMs or the pre-built templates. I'll share some documents with you guys on the BPDM templates. And generally it starts with an SAP node, so you'll have an SAP node for this BPDM templates, and which will guide you the navigation and path from where you can download this, and you can import them into your data services and you can work on them. So I've shared those SAP nodes and some of the documents and BPD, so you can just go through that. So in the next session I'll walk you through that one. And the next one is a custom. So we will look at a project and we'll talk about the custom where we use some more additional functionalities, which is, in my vision, it is a bit complex than AIO and PPDM, but strict request: do not share these recordings, especially about the projects, to any of your friends. They are pretty confidential, and I am trying to give a clear picture or try to consolidate the entire learning into one single session so that you understand where exactly we fit in and what exactly we do. Right. So once this build and everything is done, then it goes to QA system, and the testers will test that. So we have seen most of this topic when we are talking about central repository. And once the QA guys test that, if there are any defects, they will send it back to the developers. If there are no defects, they give a sign off for the code production guys to move from QA to the MODS or the final system is a production system. The code promotion guys move the code from development to QA and from QA to production. And once they are in the production, they will decide if they have it is a one-time run or if it has to be scheduled on a daily basis. So based on that, we will run or schedule the jobs. And post go live, so we call that as go live. Once we complete the development and complete the loads in the production, we call it as go live. Suppose go live, there will be a phase called as a hypercare. So in the hypercare, the production support team will look into the issues, or if there are any, or if they want to fine tune the code. So the production support guys will fine tune the code. So remember, when you ever tell if you're interview saying that you worked on production support and data services, just make sure that you are talking about the right roles. Think in the shoes of production support and just see what kind of issues that you might get into. Sometimes there can be data issues which you need to fix on an ad hoc basis and put back the job in the schedule, or sometimes there will be a dependent job that has to be done, so you have to go and remove the dependent job from the schedule, fix this, run this, and then go and run the dependent job, and then put these two jobs back in the schedule. So you can tell these kind of roles, right? So you can tell these kind of roles. So you can also work on fine-tuning the existing code. So let us say initially when the project is done, the volume of data is 100 million records, or it is per table, or it is like 5 gigs of data or 10 gigs of data. But eventually, after a few years, it goes up to 10 TB or 1 TB or 5 TB of data. So now the BODS system will slow down. So you can work on both the admin side and on the development side in such scenarios. On the admin side, you can go and ramp up the server to meet the volume requirements, so it has enough cache to run the jobs. And the second thing is you can fine-tune the code to take small chunks of data and process that in a way that you can improve the performance. So these are the generic roles that you play as a production support consultant. And when you are in development, your activities will be the technical design document and mapping sheet, understanding them, discussing about these mapping sheet and technical design document with the functional consultants or data owners, and then you send your code for a peer review, complete the build, send it for the code review, get an approval, upload that into the central repository, and notify the code promotion consultants to move that from central to QA so that the testers can work on this. So be very specific and just try to follow the order that we are talking here, so that if somebody looks at your resume, like when I do interviews, I look at the resume and see if this guy has put things in order that just used in the project. So I upfront know that this guy worked on the project. So I'll try to. Second thing that I'll try to see is like what is his subject level and what is his depth on the subject, right? So when you are preparing your resumes, just make sure that you put them in the right order and talk about the right descriptions and the most important thing, use the right jargon. When you are using the terminology uh, about the central repository, you can mention check in, check out rather than adding and deleting from the central repository. So you can use the right terminology so that that gives a good impression for the person who is looking at your resume. Right. So these are the different phases in which the project goes, and finally, once the go live is done, it goes to the hypercare. So this is where we choose the methodology and we decide on which methodology we will follow. So in tomorrow's session, I have these documents with me where I'll walk you through first one, which is on AI methodology. This is a pretty old project. I'll show you. This is with screenshots and stuff. So this is one single document where we have all the project naming standards and screenshots of the entire job. And similar activity I've done for one of my recent projects, where we will see more functionalities than AIO or BPDM methodology. We will try to understand how that is kind of an eye opener for me when I worked on that project. We kind of did something beyond what the methodology spoke, and we kind of delivered that impossible step to the customer. And that project is supposed to be done in 6 months. We completed that in 3 months and gave it to the customer. So there are goods and bads about it, but yeah, so that has more options and that will give you a more heads up on how the projects work, the most complex project. So we will look into that one as well in our tomorrow session. And so once we complete these two projects, so that is the end of the training. I'm just giving you a heads up. So tomorrow, if we are in a position to complete these, discussing about these two projects, then tomorrow will be our last session. And I really appreciate all you guys' patience and time, and really appreciate the questions that you asked. And I encourage you to utilize the last session in a proper way. So if you have any questions, we can bundle up all the questions and I can answer those questions, and then we can go to the specific project documents. We talk about the methodologies, projects, and then uh, we can complete the project orientation as well. So any questions in today's topic? One is loading data into Sap Hana, and the second one is the project methodologies or the flow in which we generally work. So this looks pretty similar to other projects, but remember this is a data migration project and it has to follow a different approach from the other projects. If not, because for one of our customers, the sales guy, he said like, he just wrote the word called agile methodology, and he just promised the customer saying that, hey, we'll do this in the agile methodology. He has no idea what agile methodology is or will it fit the customer's requirement or not. So it says that we do the work, you validate it, we'll redo it, you validate it, we'll redo it, you validate it, till you are satisfied, we'll redo it, right? But that is not how you can load. So this is, when you load into development, you validate that, and you load it into the QA, you validate that, and if they want to test the final output, you create a replica of your production system as mocks, and you load the data into mock, and finally you load it into the production system, that is the final one. You cannot load multiple times into the production system, and it is not a program that you keep executing on the production system all the time, right? So we have to be very specific in choosing the methodologies or promising the customers about that. So I'm just giving you a heads up on how and why and where we have to be very strict in choosing the methodologies and suggesting to the customers as well. So any questions? Sorry, Adil, that I can just open those on the screen and show it to you, but probably I cannot share like my project property from some other companies, so I just can't share those documents with you. But I can do one thing. I can share you the BPDM SAP node, the content and everything. So this is that you need to download all these things from Service Marketplace. So I can download that for you and I can share those content. You can look into the SAP notes and the relevant documents and go through that. This project documents probably I'm not allowed to share. So currently we are working on the BPDM templates. The advanced version of BPDM is called Rapid Deployment Solutions RDS. Sorry. We are working on RDS 4.2. So that is something that is latest, and we are delivering the advantage of the RDS because the customer had a requirement that they have to do a quick migration onto the target. So we are using the RDS rapid deployment solutions when we are loading the data into their system using IDOCs. So normally, if you are not working on any SAP project, so your source and target is not SAP, you go with the AIO methodology where you do extraction, so you break the job into different phases and you start running it. And if you are specifically working on your target system as SAP, so you go with the BPDM methodology because it encourages in loading the data into the target system using IDOCs, and you get the pre-built. So with this pre-built templates that we have service marketplace, we are actually saving a lot of penalty for our current customer because they have a timeline in which they did an acquisition recently, and they have a timeline in which they have to migrate the data, and till then they have to pay some service fees to those the company to which they acquired, to those IT teams for their server maintenance and everything. They have to pay some penalty or service fees. So with the help of these BPDMs, we actually cut short this 1.5-year project into 3 months project, and we are actually migrating the data. We're in the process of migrating the data to them, to their consolidated system. So that actually saved a lot of time and money for them. So it depends, Rahan. It depends on what kind of project that you are. If the customer has good amount of time, so you do a lot of analysis and then you see what is the best fit for them. If they are target systems or Oracle or any databases or SAP Hana, you probably build that on a custom AIO methodology. And if the target system is SAP and they want a loading mechanism through IDOC, so you go to the BPDM or RDS, Rapid Deployment Solutions. Well, welcome now. But again, sorry for extending it for 20 minutes. I know it's pretty late for you guys back home in India and in US. Right, so thanks for your patience and thanks for joining today's session. Again, we'll connect sharp at 6:30 a.m. ISTM, 8 p.m. CST, or US time, general time that we connect on a daily basis, right? So we'll connect sharp and once again, we'll connect sharp tomorrow, and we can we can discuss on these things. So, Rehan, can you please call tomorrow afternoon? Will that be possible for you? Alright. Tomorrow afternoon, our time. Alright. Thank you so much. Alright, sir. Thank you, and have a good day and good night. See you in tomorrow's class.